Hello, this is the video for week 14. So in general terms, we'll be finishing up Strayed this week. There is an additional shortest reading assignment for the grad students in the folder, week 14 folder. It's Krauser's form of memoirs, so I'd like the grad students again to read this and teach it to the class, or at least pull something out of it for the class. Uh, if you are one of the grad students who's done wonderful summaries of the extra reading for grad students already, why don't you hold back and let one of the other grad students step up and do that? Uh, and I think you know who you are. So if you haven't done or participated fully in this extra assignment for grad students and you're one of the grad students, why don't you take the lead this week? Uh, I'm starting to read through the blog assignments and I'm really pleased with this. I hope that some of you, all of you, will go ahead and push this through to actually establishing a blog. And I think a few of you already have blogs. And I'd really appreciate it if you would share your work with the other students, and I'll create a new discussion board where you can put up a link to your blogs or to post the if you've done your blog in a Word document, you can post your Word document. I think the rest of the class would like to see some of the examples of what people have done. I think some of them have real potential. And following up on that, one of the things I wanted to do was talk for just a minute about alternative ways of publishing. So certainly a blog is an alternative way of publishing. Uh, Sometimes with my own blog, you can look at the stats for it and you can get a little discouraged because you have 23 people a day looking into your blog, or you'll make a new post, and maybe you'll have 30 or 40 people looking at it. But what I did recently was look at some of the analytics over a longer period of time. And I started to discover, well, I have some entries that have had 800 or 900 people read them. So, I mean, that's not in the millions, but it's a way of very quickly publishing something and getting a readership, at least some readership. And to some extent, these are readers who come from Australia or France or Brazil, all over the country. So think about blogs as an extended way or an easy way of getting yourself published and starting to build a readership, and that can supplement what you might be doing in more traditional forms of publication. I also wanted to say that there is, in case you're unaware of it now, there is something called print on demand publishing. And this is a high end Xerox kind of photocopy publishing where you do a document, lay it out, maybe in InDesign, make a high quality PDF of it, upload it to a company like Lightning Source, and then they publish it. They'll also post it on Amazon.com, so you can either self publish with this kind of technology where they actually print one book at a time. So if you do the design yourself, you could publish a book for about less than $100. And when someone orders it on Amazon.com, they'll print one copy and ship it for you and keep an account for you. So it's likely to be the future of publication. I'm not saying there won't be traditional print publications going on, but probably 90% of the publications in the future are going to be print on the demand. So you can start your own company, or you can look at small local presses, which have sprung up because of print on demand publications, or self-publish. And it's going to be easy to get published. Here's the tough part. It's going to be harder and harder to market your work and get much of a readership. So that's where all of the supplementary kind of media comes in. Things like having a blog, being active on Twitter, having a Facebook page, and etc. So think about those kind of things as you start to build a career as a writer. The other thing that I wanted to say is certainly get started on your final project. Now, I listed that as I want you to be doing multimodal authoring. Now, multimodal authoring is broader than multimedia authoring. Now, what I mean by that is sometimes multimodal authoring may be working with several different media. There's a comp theorist, Jody Shipka, who teaches her classes on multimodal authoring. And what she does is, well, here's an example of what one of her students did. One of her students wrote an essay about training to be a ballet dancer, and she wrote it on a pair of ballet shoes. Now, if you're artistically inclined, and I know a few of you are, you may want to think about doing a multimodal essay in some different form like that. Or I'm hoping Jason will share his blog concept with everybody, because he was using more graphic narrative kind of structure. That certainly is multimodal authoring. So as long as you're using more than one medium, and that more than one medium can be technology. So it can be something as simple as including photographs. It can be including art. It can be moving into something like graphic narration. Whatever you want to do here, but just let's acknowledge that most authoring in the future is going to be multimodal in one form or another. Now, I wanted to offer you for this final essay an alternative approach. So if you want to continue to work on your blog and move toward getting it launched, I'm willing for you to do that as your final project. But if you're going to do something like that, if you could send me an email saying what you will be doing to further develop your blog or some other project. I'm open to you doing several different kinds of projects here. If there's some kind of project you want to work on, send me an email. Let me know what you want to do so I can say, yes, this is enough and this will be fine. So this will be our little contract for your final essay. So let's think about just, opening up the possibilities here. You tell me what you want to do. But if you're going to do something other than a multimodal essay, then just let me know what you're going to do so I'll have some sense of where you're going. Okay, just a few final words on Strayed. As I was finishing up reading her memoir this week, and this is the second time through it for me, and I say it holds up very well. But as I was reading, finishing it up, I was thinking a little bit about what's not in there. And that might be an interesting thing to think about. And when I say what's not in there, I'm not saying that the memoir is flawed in some way. I'm just saying that it could have gone other directions. If you think about that, what could be some of the other directions? Now, and we might want to have some discussion about this on the discussion board. For example, one of the things that I thought was missing was here she is hiking the Pacific Crest Trail. She's in wilderness area, and there's not a whole lot of nature writing in the memoir. I mean, sometimes she'll do a description of a river and talk about, for example, pitching her tent on a wooden bridge that's over top of a river and what that was like to sleep listening to the creek babble underneath her all night long. But there actually is, it seems to me, is not a whole lot of what we would call sort of traditional nature writing. There's not also a whole lot of reference to nature writers. For example, she just briefly mentions John Muir, who is anybody who does nature writing uh, will gravitate toward John Muir because he really set out following up on people like Emerson and Thoreau, certainly, but he established many of the norms of nature writing. So it's interesting that, to me, that in a work about primarily about hiking, that there's very little of what I would call nature writing. There's also not a whole lot of background history. She does do this at times. So when she goes into a new section of the trail, she'll sometimes spend a paragraph or so talking about the history of that part of the trail or the history of Cradle Lake, for example, in Oregon. But she doesn't devote a lot of time to that. There is a little bit of time talking about the sort of technical aspects of hiking, but not much. She really doesn't go into much detail on it. For example, she talks about picking up a ski pole out of a discarded equipment box. And these kind of boxes are along both the PCT and the Appalachian Trail where people say, I don't need this anymore. I'm going to just put this in this box, and then anybody who needs it can pick it up. She picks up this one ski pole. She doesn't go into a whole lot of detail about why that's significant and why she walks along with one ski pole. Well, there is something called trekking poles, and usually you have two of them. But these are like ski poles that you use as you're hiking. Some people say that they will extend the amount of miles you can get in each day because you are, as if you were cross-country skiing, you're kind of pushing yourself forward. It is also a way of balancing yourself when you're on uneven ground or going through a stream and you've got a large pack on your back. You need something else to help balance you. And so most seasoned hikers, or many of them, will use trekking poles. But she doesn't go into much detail about that. So I think it's kind of interesting, some of the things that are left out. We haven't had a whole lot of discussion yet on whether or not this is a healing memoir. I mean, certainly she was healed, as she argues, on the process of hiking the trail. But is that actual process of healing embedded into the narration is the question I would ask. I think that if something is actually a healing metaphor or healing narrative, that process, you can see it unfolding actually in the narration. So we might want to have some discussion on the discussion board on that as well. So have a good week. Send me a message if you have questions, and let me know how things are going. See you on the discussion board.